Today we're going to go over linked genes and sex-linked genes. So first up, linked genes are genes that are on the same chromosome and are located close to each other. The closer the genes are, the greater the chance that they're going to be inherited together. That's because crossing over can occur, and when that happens, the genes that are closer together are still together, even when genetic information has been exchanged. Let's look at this one example from the Campbell AP biology textbook with different variations of flies. The wild type has a gray body and normal-shaped wings. But then there's this mutant type fly with a black body and vestigial wings. I'll just use the letter G for gray and N for normal wing. Okay, so let's say that the wild type is a hybrid, so its genotype will be capital G lowercase g, capital N lowercase n. Then the mutant type fly's genotype must of course be this, since the black body and vestigial wings are recessive traits, so both alleles must be recessive for each gene. If the gene for body color and the gene for wing shape are on different chromosomes, then that means they will sort independently, so there's an equal chance that the offspring will get either a black or gray body and an equal chance that they will get either normal or vestigial wings. But if the genes are on the same chromosomes, then they'll be inherited together. That means if a fly has a gray body, then it must have normal wings too. And if a fly has a black body, then it must have vestigial wings. Let's take a look at the results to see if the genes are on the same chromosome or not. So these are the expected ratios for if the genes are on different chromosomes. 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. This first genotype is the wild parent's genotype with a gray body and normal wings. The second genotype is the mutant parent's genotype with a black body and vestigial wings. The third genotype has a gray body but vestigial wings, and the last genotype has a black body with normal wings. The third and fourth genotypes symbolize something called recombinant offspring, meaning that the children have mixed traits from both parents. Here are the ratios for if the genes are linked and always inherited together, 1 to 1 to 0 to 0. That means the offspring will look like the parents and there are no recombinant offspring. So our results say that there are 965 offspring of the first genotype, 944 of the second, 206 of the third, and 185 of the fourth. This doesn't match up with either of the ratios. However, it does mean that the genes are linked because the numbers that we got are close to the ratios for the linked genes. The small numbers that we see for the recombinant offspring mean that there has been a small amount of crossovers that occurred separating the two genes. The reason the number is so small for the amount of crossovers is because the genes were probably close together on the chromosome, so there would have been a small chance of them separating during a crossover. Whenever you see numbers that are similar to the ratios of the results that we've seen here, like 803, 799, 92, and 95, you'll know immediately that the genes are linked. Just pay attention to the ratios and the numbers because a question like that was on my AP exam. Once I saw the numbers, I knew at once that they were linked genes. Now let's move on to sex-linked genes. Traits that are sex-linked are located on the X chromosome, rarely on the Y chromosome. Some traits that are sex-linked include colorblindness and Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and it's actually harder for a female to have these conditions than a male. Here's why. Let's say that we have an affected X chromosome for colorblindness. This woman is a carrier since only one of her chromosomes is affected and the other isn't. That means she isn't colorblind because it's a recessive trait and she would need both X chromosomes to be affected in order to be colorblind. Now let's move on to the father who is not colorblind. I'm going to draw a Punnett square to illustrate the genotypes of the possible children between these two individuals. Do you see how one of the girls is a carrier and the other has no affected X chromosome at all? And notice how it's the same with the boys. One has an affected X chromosome and the other doesn't. But this boy will be colorblind since boys don't have two X chromosomes, they only have one. And since the X chromosome he ended up with has the trait for colorblindness, he will in fact be colorblind. Now you can see that males can't be carriers for sex-linked traits. If he has an affected allele, he will express it no matter what. Of course, if the trait was dominant, then any girls who are carriers will express the trait too. But in this case, since colorblindness is recessive, the girl carrier will not be colorblind. Okay, that's all I have for you on linked genes. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions about biology, please ask in the comments. Bye!